Dearest nephew, I hope this message reaches you in good health. I washed up again in America, and this time I've decided to stay. Write to me if you can. Better still, join me here. I'll buy you steak and eggs for breakfast. My fondest regards, Uncle Silvio.
L'America. Steak and eggs. And once we're paid up, I'm on the first boat over.
I'm going far away from this place, Gaetano. Never coming back. Bastards would have to kill me first.
Hopes, dreams, overall aspirations for a better life. This is something practically everyone experiences, regardless of where a person was born or what they have. There seems to be this perpetual need for more. Some chase those desires out of envy, others purely ambition. Then there's a camp of people that just, no matter what, believe that they truly deserve to be living a better life than what they are now, no matter how comfortable they are objectively already living. Money, upbringing, status, health, people's individual reasons or set of reasons alternate, but that underlying feeling always stays the same. This compulsion or desire is what exactly led to the birth of sayings such as the grass is always greener on the other side. It's a saying that has become seemingly universal to serve as a warning and a reality check. A reminder that the future we imagine, the version of ourselves we think will finally feel satisfied once our desires or goals are finally achieved, is often founded on half-truths and poorly informed assumptions. People manage to convince themselves that somehow their lives will magically be fixed once everything falls into place, only to realize that view or understanding they held was never based off of sound logic. You're lucky if you can come to that understanding before it turns into this never-ending drive to satiate a void, misinterpreted as a desire being a need, or the surface-level fix working as the correct answer to a far more complicated or root-level problem. At some point in time, you will have no choice but to face the main question of what is better to you. For Enzo Favara, that question isn't as deep as it is for you and I. Enzo grew up on Sicily during the late 1800s, sold off as a child slave in order to pay off for his father's debts. Because of this unforgiving upbringing, a better life for Enzo wasn't this philosophical debate. It was in fact anything that didn't match the reality he woke up to every single day. Enzo had no clean clothes, no shoes, no privacy, no free will to speak of. And when we get on the topic of food, specifically on a daily basis, that was a privilege you had to earn. The interesting part of Enzo's desire for a better life, however, does have an element that is often overshadowed by the initial desire, which we again can all relate to. That element is when you're so desperate to improve your life, you can forget the promise you initially made to yourself, landing yourself in this compromising position that, albeit might feel better, and sometimes objectively is, still sees you falling short of your initial promise. Enzo swore to get away from the oppressive and heat-choked air of Colazolfo. That was his main goal he made to his fellow slave Gaetano before he died. However, Enzo never made it past the other side of the island. He was dragged into a gang war out of a dangerous mixture of gratitude, personal vendettas, and a misunderstanding, thinking he was in a position of equality and respect. Yet the reality was he was never more than a lucky carasu, who by fate just so happened to be saved by the Torrisi crime family, and in a few short years, repaid the Don with the biggest offense imaginable.
What? Please, I can't.
There is no cat, not down here.
We first see Enzo in 1904, during which it's quite evident there's a long and interesting history already established both for Enzo and the world he's currently surrounded in. As previously mentioned, Enzo was sold off at 5 years old to the Colazolfo mine. The mine was originally owned by Raffaele Fontanella's father. However, Raffaele would go on to assume ownership of it and all other properties once his father died. This resulted in him not just taking over all properties, but also inheriting the title of Baron. Unfortunately, unlike his father, Raffaele took no interest within any of this business that he suddenly found himself in charge of. He preferred to stay within his luxurious apartment in Palermo, far from the Valle d'Orata, which is the region the game takes place in, wanting to see profits continue to flow in while doing absolutely nothing, Fontanella would opt to split his assets between two camps. On the one hand, there was Bernardo Torrisi, Don of the Torrisi crime family. Bernardo grew up here, and he had a pre-existing agreement between himself and Raffaele's father. The basic version of this agreement was Don Torrisi would effectively work as an overseer of the Valle d'Orata on behalf of the Baron. He would protect the local populace from bandits while collecting contributions from the locals to ensure a steady rate of protection. He would also serve as the muscle for Fontanella's properties. If any strikes or refusals to continue to work broke out at any point in time, Don Torrisi and his associates would be the ones to answer and make sure they went back to work. It was a harmonious agreement that would come to see the Don construct his own vineyard and even erect his own beautiful home within the region that would eventually serve as both a defensive stronghold from rivals and a seat of his growing power. But the bitter truth for those that really understood everything going on behind the scenes is that Torrisi's vineyard, his house, everything else in the valley, was all off a lease thanks to the Baron. With Raffaele's father's passing, this agreement would continue undisturbed, creating a status quo between him and Torrisi. The real change, however, would come in the region of Colozolfo of the Valley. Wanting to see profits continue, maybe even buying into the idea they would even grow, Fontanella decided to look for men that were experienced in running sulfur mines, and so he looked to the region of Agrigento, another area far from the Valle d'Orata. Here, Fontanella would come to understand two men had great experience in running sulfur mines there and wanted to see that same level of success brought to Colozolfo. And so out of a mixture of greed, a lack of interest within what should have stayed a family business, and no consideration for bringing in outsiders, Fontanella entered a partnership that would see Ruggero Spadaro, one of those two men who had experience in Agrigento, come to the valley and take over the operations of the Colozolfo mine, albeit only owning half of the mine's shares while Fontanella would keep the other half. This is all important because it would form the backdrop of everything we see within the Colozolfo mine. Spadaro would move into the region and quickly imitate the same operational measures from Agrigento here within Colozolfo. While doing so, Fontanella was content staying far away, allowing Spadaro to run the mine as he saw fit, which was quite brutal. Il Merlo, son of Massimo Bastoni, the partner of Ruggero Spadaro, who decided for unknown reasons to stay back and run operations in Agrigento, served as Spadaro's right-hand man and head guard of the mine. While we only see a fraction of his overall time within the Colozolfo mine, we can easily gather everything we need to know when it came to Il Merlo's own treatment towards the workers. At one point, reminding a man who appeared to have hurt his ankle, or at the very least can't sufficiently carry the heavy load of sulfur rocks back up to the surface, Il Merlo would choke him and remind him of the dire situation he's in, that there is no such thing as free will down here.
Get that up top.
Signore, my ankle. I can't.
What?
Please, I can't.
There is no captain. Not down here.
I'll do it.
Continuing by letting the guard know there's a veterinarian on hand and he may need to be put down. Similar to an injured racehorse that can no longer run, these people are just expendable assets. And by 1904, problems plaguing the mine have only started to compound. In light of the declining demand for sulfur all across Europe, it appears Fontanella has gotten involved with the operations of the mine to such a degree that local headlines are starting to take notice. The two most prominent owners of the mine, Raffaele Fontanella and Girolamo Ludovici, had recently had a heated disagreement on what to do with the mine. Ludovici favors aggressive expansion to compensate for the decline in revenue, while Fontanella has become aware of the poor conditions workers are forced to endure, with his primary reasons for resisting expansion being how such a move would impact the environmental landscape and the conditions of those who would be forced to conduct the work. Removed from the moral debate and just taking a look at the reality of the mines and the operations of which are far much grimmer, I want to take this moment to highlight one aspect that is quite prominent to Enzo specifically. It's implied that he suffered beatings and such cruelties that were quite common for the carasu at the time. Enzo had many deep scratches and scars over his hands, forearms, and elbows. While he never directly addresses or explains this, it provides a gap, leaving it up to a mixture of interpretation and just historical insight on treatment of the carasu. The beatings would have come from forcing a young Enzo to continue to work. Such a move that was quite common. Sometimes guards would even burn children to force them to work. somehow managing to muster enough strength to carry sulfur rock loads on their backs that were sometimes 2 to 4 times more than their own body weights, which resulted in many deformations and early deaths. 2 things Enzo or even Gaetano don't seem to suffer from. Well, apart from a premature death for Gaetano. Starvation, on the other hand, was also quite common, which we also see in the game. That happens for a few different reasons. Essentially, with Fontanella becoming more involved, the time he allowed for Spadaro to run the mine with full reign was beginning to come under scrutiny by Fontanella, forcing Spadaro to enter damage control in an attempt to throw out Fontanella of his trail and uncover the full extent of the ways he was truly treating the workforce underneath him. Spadaro would go on to put in a request to the board of directors for new tools for the mines, alter food shipments, cutting portions, and even moving the food to a warehouse that was exposed to rats, something that was quite common. He would also go on to provide official notices for extra shifts for those supposedly willing to work in the face of growing threats from mine cave-ins and exposure to gas, dangers which appeared to be created out of the work itself. Thus, from the top of the chain down, there became this added pressure of doubling down on the workload and efforts of the miners to compensate for lost revenue. While Spadaro focused on keeping his business partner in the dark, and miners only continued to grow more and more concerned for their safety, this provided Enzo and his friend Gaetano the perfect cover to successfully hide the money that the two of them have been saving effectively for the last 12 years to buy their freedom. It cannot be understated how difficult saving any money would have been on its own. Never mind finding an ally willing to pull his savings and keep it all in a safe place out of prying eyes from the guards or the other miners. Thanks to the recent mine collapses and fears of venturing into what would be more dangerous or unstable mines, the pair would take a risk and cleverly hide this box containing their earnings in a mine deemed dangerous, going the extra mile and even burying this under genuine rubble. Said box would additionally contain personal mementos from both boys, each with a different drive behind it that would lead to the same road of achieving their freedom. For Gaetano, it was a postcard from his uncle Silvio back in Empire Bay. Some think it's tied to Enzo and not Gaetano. However, I believe it's Gaetano's uncle due to him kissing the postcard and holding on to it for the opening sequence of the game, only handing it to Enzo to read it when they get a moment to themselves. This is yet another astonishing moment because Enzo can in fact read. Sicily during this period had an incredibly high illiteracy rate. Considering he was left here at such a young age and other miners do have the ability to read and write, it could mean someone at some point in time somewhat took Enzo under their wing, teaching him not only to not trust anyone else, to work hard, keep your head down, but to also read. Or it could have been his father that taught him to read. Either of the two are completely viable explanations. With Gaetano having his postcard as a motivation and ultimate destination, Enzo on the other hand was left with one simple item: a wooden horse with his name carved into the underside. It was the last thing his father gave him before he left him under the ownership of the mine. It served as his reminder for the abandonment of his father and the subsequent hatred he'd harbor against him for leaving Enzo to such an oppressive quality of life. Hatred that only appears to be finally hitting its breaking point as a few moments later, when Il Merlo is introduced, Enzo's visibly agitated by Il Merlo's treatment of another miner. So he steps in and offers to cover the work on behalf of the injured miner in an attempt to save him from continued mistreatment. Now, besides introducing Il Merlo, this scene does another subtle move, providing us further insight into Enzo's own mentality and overall position here within the mine. That's his willingness to even intervene in the situation. Once dismissed by Il Merlo, Gaetano would scold Enzo's decision to pick a fight with Il Merlo, of all people, in front of everyone else. A bad decision that seems all the more foolish when they're so close to getting out of here. As Enzo explains, someone had to help. This would prompt Gaetano to ask if anyone had ever helped him. He would stay quiet, perhaps as a small admission that no one has ever helped him, and with his freedom only a few months away, provided he can stay out of trouble and keep the money safe, maybe it was foolish of him to speak up. And maybe, if he hadn't, Gaetano would still be alive.
I wasn't sure you'd last.
Everything I want is here.
Oh. And what is it you want?
To live how I choose.
Due to Enzo speaking up, Il Merlo would attempt to punish him and reassert his position as being in charge by sending Enzo and Gaetano down into a mine shaft in search of a group of miners. The miners in question haven't been heard from in quite some time, and this was particularly alarming because they were sent further into a section of the mine that had just opened up to bypass recent cave-ins while continuing to dig. Due to the lack of any word from this crew, Worried workers would raise concerns on the recent tremors, causing more support beams collapsing or even the threat of gas leaking. Citing this crew's silence as a warning, work should halt until it's confirmed the group of miners are all alright. Now, I don't want to make it sound as if it was a moral question that weighed on Enzo's mind for the remainder of the game on why he had to get involved when he did with El Merlo here, because this arguably would lead directly to the death of Gaetano. As being sent as part of the rescue party, the two of them would run into the lifeless bodies of the missing mining crew, confirming the validity of the real fear the others had. This missing crew appears to have suffocated to death due to exposure to natural gas. It's while Gaetano and Enzo are examining their bodies, an earthquake erupts, causing the rest of the mine shaft to cave in, while cracks in the floor increased the amount of gasoline exposure to the two men. Desperate to not be crushed to death or suffocate, the two men would make a desperate attempt to make their way back to the surface. As they were just about to make it out, Gaetano realized after squeezing through a narrow pathway, the money he and Enzo had been saving up fell out of his shirt. Despite Enzo pleading with him to forget it, Gaetano would go back, doing his best to retrieve the fallen money. Unfortunately, it's while caught in this narrow pathway stretched out to reclaim the money that'll buy his freedom, he was crushed to death, just a few feet away from Enzo. Now, for the rest of the game, Enzo doesn't speak of Gaetano. However, with him keeping his postcard and taking into account how emotional Enzo is from watching his friend being crushed, instead of the weight of survivor's guilt or even remorse out of a sense of responsibility, I believe it's much more fitting to say his eventual destination and hopes he found within Empire Bay was a poetic way to continue on the legacy of Gaetano. This might be a little bit of reaching as well, but maybe Enzo's silence and never mentioning Gaetano also plays to another part of him, that Gaetano would have been the closest thing he ever had to family. Considering Enzo's father would have already given him a distorted view on family, and as we'll later go on to see, his conversations with Isabella on the notion of family reveal it's nothing more than a meaningless word he's seemingly detached from. So with the closest ones of family literally being buried, it's a notion he never really visits or talks about until he gets to the place of establishing his own. Nonetheless, overtaken by grief, Enzo would emerge from the collapsed tunnel to angrily confront El Merlo. In doing so, he completely disregards any adherence to the hierarchy established. El Merlo similarly would disregard him, basically telling Enzo Gaetano's death was nothing more than the mountain's will. It's right as El Merlo's beginning to turn around and focus on the rest of the workers, Enzo would insult him, leading to an eventual knife fight between the pair of them. Considering El Merlo was one of the veterans of the Torrisi Spadaro War of the 1890s, and of course Enzo had been subjected to a life of servitude, wielding a knife that could have been seen as symbolic of him, beaten, dirty, rusted out, but still capable of doing a good enough job with enough force behind it. Understandably, he would have been beaten by Merlo, which he was. Fortunately for him, another powerful tremor would allow him the opportunity to both humiliate El Merlo by slashing him across the face and escape by sliding down a hill, still in a horse, and riding as quickly as he could across unknown territory. During this desperate escape with his life, he would unknowingly enter the site of the Valle Dorata, forbidden for the Spadaro men to enter, as per the treaty with the Torrisi crime family from less than a decade earlier. El Merlo, unwilling to accept the disgrace of Enzo's cut across his face and eager to pay him back, would arm a group of men, hop in a truck, and search all throughout the night for the runaway carasu, eventually finding him out in the buildings of what initially appeared to be an abandoned piece of property. However, as El Merlo is on top of Enzo, ready to take his time with what he believed was his property, he gets an unwelcome surprise, the sound of gunfire.
I'm gonna make you wish you died in that rubble, huh?
What are you doing here, Damiano? Answer me.
Don Torrisi, this is Caruso.
I asked you a question.
In fleeing to save his own life by a stroke of incredible luck, Enzo didn't just cross the side of the valley forbidden by the Spadaros, but he was hiding out on a portion of the Don Torrisi's own personal vineyard, not too far from the Don's own house, prompting Bernardo Torrisi to respond personally with a force of armed guards to remind El Merlo the position he truly was in on this side of the valley. In my opinion, there's no greater introduction to a Don out of the entire Mafia series than this one right here. Not only does it immediately set the stage for the tension and hatred between these two forces, but we also get to see how intimidating Torrisi can be and the position he takes against the Spadaros, telling his most trusted underboss, Luca Trapani, that he prefers tempting war with the Spadaros by saving Enzo and placing him under his protection, and allowing the Spadaros to continue to do whatever they please, least of all by violating their treaty and taking someone directly from Torrisi's own land. It's a marvelous scene that allows Torrisi to reinforce his power while Enzo gains security from his lifelong captors while earning his freedom. Although that may not be immediately obvious, as Luke is instructed to take Enzo back to the vineyard after Enzo confirmed with the Don he can work. This is both a smart move specifically for Enzo, as it'll be the safest place for him to be in the off chance El Merlo or any other Spadaro members decide to wait around and see if they can catch him without supervision of Torrisi's men. However, this is also a normal move by Torrisi, often presenting himself as a man of the people and benefactor. Torrisi has a number of workers who live on his vineyard, tend to the grounds, and engage in house cleaning chores, the official family business, which is the creation of Torrisi wine, exportation of said wine, among various other jobs, and people who need a place to stay are usually allowed to come and go as they so please, as long as they help work around the property, earning that spare room. And so with that in mind, technically, Enzo wasn't entirely a unique case. It was just by the factor of him being a carasu and on the run from the Spadaros, he was saved. On a more personal level though, Luca would later express when they first found Enzo, he was just skin and bones. But he knew then and there that there was a fire inside of him, something that was undeniable upon learning that he was the one who cut Edmerlo's face. When brought to the vineyard, Enzo would be placed within a small room. It had a bed, a closet for clothes, and a place to bathe. In other words, it was privacy, clean clothes, and a small place to call his own. A world difference from what he was in only 24 hours before. A world difference than what he had known for his entire life. The following day, Enzo's given clean clothes, some honest work, and although some people are still standoffish, with comments on him being a potential spy for the Spadaros quelled when word of Il Merlo's face begins to spread, Enzo on the other hand doesn't mind being talked down to and dismissed or just things he's used to. It's everything else that's new and frankly quite intoxicating for him, while the introduction to Cesare, waking Enzo up in a way that compels him to jump out of bed, brandishing a knife and demanding to know who he is, followed by having him to do all of his chores around the house while he kicks his feet up, is almost just as important as Enzo's first meeting of Isabella, a beautiful woman that speaks to him with dignity and even offers a fresh apple. The introduction of the two of the biggest people in his life after joining Torrisi's are important on their own. However, I don't want those two people's introductions to overshadow what's essentially happening to Enzo here, the mental shift that's rapidly taking hold of him. Upon the game's conclusion, many criticize Enzo's mentality, falling in love and then deciding to stay here with the Torrisi family, thinking he could earn the Don's favor and trust through fanatical loyalty and unparalleled courage, which was foolish. While those criticisms are valid to a degree, if we go back to my beginning monologue of how people get comfortable and compromise, settling for something that is far better than where they were before, albeit still falling short of what they could truly achieve, and they stuck to their initial vision, Enzo in these early moments is like a sponge. He was saved, fed, clothed, welcomed, and treated respectfully and allowed to stay so long as he wanted. Add to it a tinge of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the instant warm guidance of Luca. Can you really fault him for being so naive and buying into the idea that everything he can ever want or dream of is all right here? And it's in these early stages Enzo is very naive. Throughout Enzo's earliest moments on the vineyard, it's undeniable he has a level of curiosity that could easily be seen as dangerous for him. From the moment he stepped foot on the vineyard, he was warned to not go poking around, cause trouble, or ask too many questions. And that's exactly what he does. He asks what Cesare's going to do while he's doing all of the work. A bold move for someone that was just taken in the night before. He asks about Tino. He asks freely about Isabella before even knowing who she was. On the day of the Palio, heading into San Celeste, he comments on how it's a day of celebration and everyone takes the day off from work, except for them. Now that last one's not a question per se, but it still falls within the realm of being grossly naive of what you're saying or the questions you ask and what kind of consequences those can be followed up with. And to be fair, for most of the questions he asks, it's all brushed off as being nothing more than a mind boy that doesn't quite know his place just yet. Apart from his comment with Luca, who corrects him, reminding him it's those types of days off normal workers get which separate them. It's with this comment that I think it's best now to focus on Luca. When you initially play the game, it's quite apparent Luca takes the mentor role for Enzo, bringing him up to speed on everything he needs to know without ever saying too much before Enzo is officially inducted into the family. Once he's capable and aware of the family's true nature of business, Luca then shifts the way he speaks to Enzo and doubles down on the business and respectful side of things, as opposed to the strong-arm nature both the Don and Tino fall into. Examples of this is how he never insults the Spadados, unlike Don Torrisi himself, reminding Enzo that it's a delicate balance when it comes to protecting the people. It's a mutual relationship, not to be approached so aggressively as Cesare appears to do so. You don't have to go through every single cutscene with a fine-tooth comb to understand that he appears to be molding Enzo into the perfect successor. One who adheres to the rules of the life while keeping a business level head and not thinking too irrational or acting out too emotional. At times, it feels almost as if he's shaping Enzo to become the voice within the Torrisi organization that seems to be so poorly lacking save for Luca himself, as if bringing another logical, business-minded person from an entirely different generation to set the new standard. And Torrisi crime aside, I believe Luca genuinely always had the best intentions for Enzo. If we look at that natural progression of how Luca treats him, it goes from making sure he's comfortable and well taken care of. He promises honest work. There's no flashes, there's no power trips, there's no guarantee to get back at the Spadados whatsoever. It's just simply, here's a place to sleep, here's some food, we'll get you some work. Don't go somewhere you shouldn't be. As time goes on, you'll know who to go to for help and who around the vineyard you need to keep an eye out for, and everything will be okay. From there, we get a conversation where he addresses Enzo on how he subverted his expectations of not lasting long with them. Luca took Enzo for someone who would have headed for the United States and obtained his fortune like so many others have appeared to do so. And it's during the same conversation Enzo would admit this.
Everything I want is here.
Oh. And what is it you want?
To live how I choose.
You're a hard worker, Enzo. A dependable pair of hands. That'll see you go far.
And so without giving out any kind of false hope or promises of something greater, Lucas shares he's a dependable pair of hands. Great as that is, there are still rules to abide by though. And those rules extend far beyond the grounds of the Don's property. With the new rules, Enzo would learn very quickly, 3 in particular, 2 of which are closely intertwined. That's to never speak to the Don or his consigliere without being spoken to directly, touching on business matters that doesn't concern him. The third, and perhaps most dangerous of all, is to never, under any circumstance, be seen alone with the Don's daughter.
I can ride on Torrisi.
You've caused quite a stir. A runaway to a champion ride, just like that.
Your father showed me a kindness. I help where I can.
Enzo's story is broken up into a span of 3 to 4 years. From 1904 to 1905, we see him in a period that can essentially be viewed as gratitude-driven. He becomes so fixated on showing the Don he was thankful of being saved by him that night in the L building that he commits himself to helping any way he can, beginning with stepping in and offering to ride during the Palio on behalf of the Don after the original rider was deemed unable to properly perform, thanks to Cesare taking him out drinking as a new drinking partner the night before. Well, initially chastised by Tino, questioning Luca what this farmhand is doing here, Enzo would be allowed to fill in for the Don after Luca signs off on it, confirming Enzo did have the ability to ride, as he did manage to outrun the Spadados. Now, I do again want to take a moment to highlight the subtleties within this scene. On one hand, there's the anger of Tino. How dare this nobody step into their tent and think it's perfectly fine to get involved within affairs that does not concern him. The Don would step in front of Tino to both protect Enzo and his curiosity, as it's ultimately not a bad option given the current circumstances. The Don then moves to Luca to quietly ask what Enzo's name is. Further driving home, he is so far to the bottom of the entire hierarchy despite the Don saving him personally, and even directly speaking to him, yet regardless of that, he still does not know his name. Then there's the presence of Isabella, who witnesses all of this. It's not to say she directly contributed to Enzo offering to help, but it does help further solidify the idea within her mind that Enzo is different from the rest of the people that surround her and her father. The heart of the reason of why she's drawn to him to begin with. It puts her at the right place at the right time. It shows us Tino's aggression and how the Don is really the only one capable of saving anyone from his wrath. I also love how if you remove the excitement of the Palio being won by Enzo, which is a phenomenal achievement on its own that Doubles in serving, as Luca puts it, twisting the knife to the spadados. This theme of Enzo being a nobody is continued from this initial interaction in the tent to the immediate conclusion of the race. The Don doesn't thank Enzo in any personal way or express any sort of gratitude to him apart from a general acknowledgement on stage as a celebration for their rider and nothing more. While Tino, a few moments later, appears behind him with the crate of Torrisi wine for him to deliver, as that is the real reason he was ever invited to the Palio to begin with: work. Considering Enzo's a low-level worker, that's less an insult and more a matter of fact. However, it's how Tino goes about it that makes it hard to feel like it's anything but personal, sarcastically commenting on how, in all of the excitement, he almost forgot why he was here, topping it off with a condescending tap on the cheek. Yet another faint reminder of Enzo being beneath him. Perhaps with Tino being a little more rooted in the traditional ways of appearances and show of force, maybe this initial resentment of Enzo came from being represented at the Palio by a carasu. Perhaps it came from being shut down by the Don and allowing this dirty mind boy inside their tent and weasel their way into affairs strictly kept for those high enough within their ranks to be trusted. While somewhat a success as he was granted the position to ride and save the Don's honor, it may well have been a move in Tino's mind to ensure this type of behavior isn't encouraged. It's out while delivering Torrisi's wine with the company of Isabella, who insisted on tagging along under the guise of needing a walk, where we get to see the two of them interact more. Keep in mind, we don't really know concretely what the interactions between the two of them have been like, if they had any at all. From the day they first met out while Enzo was cleaning the stables to this day where he saves the Don's honor during the Palio, we know a couple of weeks have passed at the least. Two major indicators to confirm that are, of course, how long Enzo's hair has grown, and if you take a moment to read the in-game description at the start of the Palio's mission. However, that gives us a time frame Enzo has been with the Torrisis in general, and not provide any real knowledge on what he has been up to or what his interactions have been like within his new environment and those that occupy that same space. In order to not repeat points already covered, I think it's best to keep in mind how the Don and Tino interact with him in the tent, as well as Cesare in the subsequent mission commenting on how they're riding out with the shit shovelers now. These are interactions and perceptions reinforcing how poorly Enzo was thought of when he was acknowledged. Add to it Enzo addressing Isabella formally during the opening moments of their walk in San Celeste, and you have something more incredible here than really initially elaborated on. A mind boy turned hero and bitter enemy of the Spradados overnight is nothing to scoff at. However, it's during this interaction that we also come to understand that Enzo and Isabella are two sides of the same coin. Earlier I mentioned how thanks to Enzo's father leaving him at a young age, he would have a distorted view on family. He had no one, and the one person who he did have at one point in time abandoned him with a painful trinket to hold on to. He had no one, and he had no illusions about that. Isabella, on the other hand, apparently seemed to have everybody. Everyone knew who Isabella was. Yet, as she would explain to Enzo here, she had no idea who they were. The only reason they know who she isn't out of a personal connection or an interest within Isabella herself, but rather that person's desire to earn favor with her father, resulting in her having 1,000 uncles that all appear to greet her in a loving and respectful way, but it's hollow. Isabella says that she hasn't had a family in a long time. Consequently, we have someone whose family rejected him, and another who is trapped by the duty of their family. If you allow me to jump around a bit to elaborate more on Enzo and Isabella, specifically how the topic of her parents are brought up within the context of her not having a family in a long time, Isabella's mother, Rosa, was a big component in her life. It sounds as if she wasn't just the one who kept the family together, but also provided Isabella a greater sense of autonomy while creating the strong sense of character she now has. Isabella would share how her and her mother would stop at a certain fountain here within San Celeste and say a prayer together, doing the same with Enzo out of a quiet tribute to her mother and their old routine. Later, she would also add that despite her mother being gravely ill, even on her worst days, she'd managed to muster up enough strength to get out of bed and take Isabella to the local ruins where she painted them from atop a nearby hill. She would recount these memories with a sense of quiet reflection, mourning not just her mother, but her quality of life back then. Upon her mother's death, everything changed. Trips to San Celeste or the local ruins were sparse if they happened at all. And based off how Isabella's tone is on the whole explanation of her and her father's relationship since her mother's passing, it appears as if the Don had become protective in a misguided way.
We used to visit the ruins all the time when my mother was alive. When we were a family. Now I have to beg my father just to leave the house.
Maybe he just wants to keep you safe.
Or keep me close, where he can control me. Last summer, I told him I wanted to study on the mainland, in Napoli. He just about smashed every glass in the house.
In lieu of continuing the same tradition with Isabella, or even allowing his maturing daughter to explore the world, he pivoted hard in the opposite direction, keeping Isabella tied close to home, erupting in a fit of rage when she expressed her wishes of studying on the mainland, which is further tied to his desire of marrying her off to Gennaro, son of Raffaele Fontanella. While still some time off from this initial walk in San Celesti together, it's this combination of losing her mother, the disintegration of what she referred to as her family, and then being forced to accept her duty of marrying Gennaro as part of her father's wishes that she has no choice but to abide by. Enzo is neither tied to duty or expectations, and it's his companionship that's genuine, unlike everyone else who only interacts with her out of appeasement or respect to her father. That easily explains why she gravitated to Enzo. But no matter how amazing this friendship began, it would quickly come to a halt when Enzo unexpectedly runs into Leombra, El Merlo's own brother.
Minchia. Spadaros.
Hey, carasu. Or is it delivery boy now, huh? You're really coming up in the world. Even got yourself a little putana.
Testa di minchia!
Il Merlo misses you. I think I'll give him a little piece.
It's a reunion of sorts, as Enzo hadn't spoken to any Spadaro directly since escaping. Now under the Don's protection and out with his daughter, Enzo greets Leombra's invitation to a knife fight by pulling out his own, immediately putting to use the haphazard training he received from Luca just a few hours earlier. While he was bested by Luca, that wouldn't be the case here against Leombra, as it's right when Enzo appears to get ready to kill him, Luca would show up right on time, breaking up the entire fight.
Leave! This isn't over, carasu!
Figli puttana, get the fuck out of here!
Leombra would be the one for Luca to immediately set his sights on. Yet when he's escorted away, Luca's attention turns to the other major problem of Isabella being placed right in the center of a very dangerous situation. A situation that could have very easily spilled over into completely eviscerating the Torrisi-Spadaro treaty, as that was still somewhat respected. Not wanting to escalate this entire situation could have been the exact mindset that set the entire way Luca handled this situation, from letting Leombra go, as opposed to just letting Enzo kill him, telling Isabella to head back to her father's side, protecting her while ensuring that she doesn't tell anybody what happened here, as doing so could further jeopardize that treaty, potentially prompting the Don to demand some retaliatory action. It would also undermine the next key factor. Why was Enzo alone with Isabella to begin with? How did the two of them end up in such a compromising position? And so, understandably, Luca would decide to take it upon himself to set Enzo straight. This will be the first time Enzo gets a direct warning to never, under any circumstances, be caught with Isabella alone. No matter how good intentioned he might be, people talk. It just takes one person to misinterpret the situation or to say the two of them have been caught together, and Enzo can be placed in a world of hurt. The warning does also overshadow another important factor here. Isabella steps in and speaks on Enzo's behalf, explaining that he was defending her. It further solidifies Enzo's courage and bravery, and could be what directly results in Luca deciding to take him out on the day of collections in the following mission. He would use the point of winning the Polio as why Enzo deserved a change of scenery, as well as saving Cesare's mistake of getting the original writer drunk as a means to both explain Enzo's permission into their world and quiet Cesare's own objections to it. However, the invitation to step further into the family's business would be tainted by a major mistake by Enzo. Before heading out to meet with Cesare and Luca in the stables, you can decide to meet with Isabella quietly in the garden. The exchange between the two of them is relatively harmless, with Enzo wanting to apologize for the fight that broke out and telling Isabella what Luca told him, that the two of them shouldn't meet the way that they did, not then and especially not now, as people might talk. Isabella, meanwhile, comments on how she took a chance in writing to Enzo, as she herself had no idea if he could legitimately read, only to express her frustration upon hearing Enzo's wish to keep a distance between the two of them. It seems as if she's projecting just a little bit as she questions if her father now dictates his life. It's yet a small point that I thought was worth bringing up when it comes to Enzo and Isabella, as their relationship is quite important as the game progresses, but the mistake here would be Enzo being caught with Isabella by Tino.
Hey. What are you doing?
Looking for Luca.
How is he here? Sticking around where you don't belong will be the last thing you do. Capisti?
Tino had already expressed a dislike for Enzo's actions of overstepping, and now he's caught with Isabella while also lying straight to his face, as Enzo tries to cover himself up by claiming he was looking for Luca. Apart from Tino calling him out by asking if he sees Luca anywhere here, the intense confrontation between the two of them ends here, at least for now. And I genuinely think it's this moment that sets it in Tino's mind that Enzo's not to be trusted, especially around Isabella, who later admits that Tino's been watching her like a hawk. Yet despite Tino's distrust and dislike for Enzo, that doesn't hinder Enzo's rise through the ranks, as his time out on Collection Day does nothing but further prove himself, learning the ropes directly from Luca, who continuously shuts down Cesare's more callous approach of making this seem as they just crack heads and take the money owed them for protection from thieves and bandits, making it sound as if it's those exact ideas that can be blamed for why the Don doesn't send Cesare out on his own. In between these collections, it's where we get a nice understanding of a plethora of things, from Luca, how he attempts to further assimilate Enzo with them by downplaying Cesare's threats meant to either intimidate Enzo on what this type of work really demands out of them, or even at one point likening this work as being hard, not too different from the work down in the Colozolfo mine as Enzo has experienced his whole life. It's Luca's direct rebuttals to Cesare that undoubtedly helps lower the barrier of Enzo and Cesare getting close. He's also the one that perfectly sets the standard for Enzo and how these collections are meant to be run, speaking politely with a foreman struggling to deal with a workers' strike that affects all of them, to then talk about a farmer who's too proud in front of his son, but he always pays. So, Luca decides to save face and bend the knee, allowing him to resist and play the tough guy in order to save the relationship between the father and son. While this interaction is the one that is most prominent thanks to the cutscene that pulls our attention into it, I'd argue it's with Old Man Fichera that it reveals how intelligent and how well Luca knows the people he deals with. Old Man Fichera was the last stop of Collections Day, and they find him in a particularly sour mood since a water pump he had just purchased was stolen by bandits, breaching the sense of security he had in the Torrisis protecting him. He would launch into a flurry of insults at the Don and his goons. This prompts Cesare to snap at him, but Luca reacts differently. He calms Cesare, agrees with Fichera, and asks about the thieves, explaining later Fichera is harmless. However, he does have a big mouth. The insult is minor, and the remedy they provide will be heard by everyone, and thus help in a far more meaningful way than any insults just hurled will damage them. As I said earlier, Luca is all about vision, it's all about business first, and this would help the reputation. Concluding Enzo's day out by tracking down the thieves in a nearby hideout, taking the pistol he gave to him, loading it with a few bullets, and reminding Enzo this important fact that must always be remembered.
When they stole from Old Man Fichera, they put their hands in the Don's pocket. We can't have that.
After handing the loaded pistol back to him, Luca decides to return to Fichera, leaving Enzo and Cesare to deal with the bandits and hopefully retrieve the stolen water pump. Despite waves of bandits descending upon the two men, the job is an overall success, with them managing to return the water pump to Fichera and receive the initial 100 lire they came here for. It's another interesting moment with Enzo's time helping out the Torrisis, as there is an aspect of him that's not really developed that much by the writers that might seem not that important, but given the backstory of Enzo and how he has never really done much of anything outside of child slavery and seemingly innocuous work up until this point, as well as when taking into consideration some facial expressions he betrays to Luca and even some hesitancy in exhibiting violence towards those that might be a little more reluctant in paying those collections, I believe it's safe enough to say that it's interesting that Enzo not only appears to have a proficiency in firearms here, but he also has no qualms in taking somebody's life. Granted, these are bandits after all, not the same as potentially hurting good people, so the reservations for taking a life isn't a direct one-to-one comparison. However, the firearm proficiency is a little more dubious. This was early 1900s Sicily. Guns were few and far between. Typically only the mafia or official authorities had guns. I'm not saying Enzo has the best aim in the world, just making him miss a few initial shots while getting made fun of or chastised by Cesare would have been a good compromise, even if the missed shots at the start were scripted regardless of players' aim. And then in the subsequent mission with Gennaro and Isabella being kidnapped, showing Enzo's aim improving by having the game's crosshairs tighten up. I think that would have been a phenomenal indirect way of storytelling and giving us some visual feedback on Enzo's progression, without having to spoon feed us everything through dialogue or cutscenes. Again, to be fair though, this could just be me nitpicking. It might well even say more about Enzo's willingness to do whatever it takes to just prove himself. Regardless, Enzo showing up and having Cesare's back in this firefight would be the moments when Cesare finally comes around, even giving him a compliment.
Va bene. Alright. We better go. Before look at this, we got ourselves killed. Hey. You did good today. But a mine boy.
With Enzo's biggest critic finally coming around, it's not until the next year, when Enzo's introduced to Gennaro and Baron Fontanella, that he really begins to be accepted by the Don.
I counted on you keeping Isabella and Gennaro safe. But you risk your life to make amends. It showed bravery. In his family, loyalty is everything.
1905 is the shortest year in the entire game. It's only 2 missions, but that doesn't mean it's small. If anything, it's one of those years where not much happens on paper, yet everything that does happen matters significantly. Isabella opening up to Enzo about her mother, her father changing, and the pressure to marry Gennaro all happens here, but that's already all been covered. So instead, what I want to focus on here is the chain reaction, the things put into motion that day and how they start permanently changing the trajectory Enzo finds himself heading down. Interestingly, this all begins with something Enzo notices instantly. The Don, Luca, and Cesare are moving with a kind of urgency that doesn't match the setting. It's not to say that they're panicking or there's any kind of fear, it's more preparation. Like the entire day just has to be perfect. And in a way, it had to, because it could cost the Don something that he has been trying so hard to achieve for such a long time. And Isabella's the one who explains why. The mighty Don isn't as secure as he wants people to believe. In front of the Baron, he's not the same man. He performs, he smiles, he keeps everything in order. Because the Don's position in the Valle Dorata isn't ownership, it's a form of permission. In this current state, he isn't the ruler of this land, he's a tenant living on it. And if he wants the Baron to accept his son taking Isabella, if he wants this bond to become official, then today cannot have any flaws. So this is what the day really is. It's a controlled environment where the Baron's son and the Don's daughter are expected to get closer. Under supervision, of course, under rules. And the 2 sent out to reinforce those rules are Enzo and Cesare, ensuring Gennaro doesn't overstep. Don't let him get too comfortable, don't let him forget where he is and who Isabella actually belongs to in the eyes of everyone watching. That was their job. Escort, keep an eye on them. Stay close enough to intervene, yet far enough not to be seen as hovering or interfere with the intentions of the day. And from the outset, that's exactly what they do. They reach the ruins, the destination of Isabella and Gennaro, and for a while it's quiet. As the 2 break off and move out of view, Cesare and Enzo stay behind near Gennaro's car, and wait there for about 2 hours. During that time, nothing happens. And so finally giving into boredom, Cesare suggests that they take out the car for a test drive. It's a decision that is poorly timed, because it's while they're out racing on a nearby track, gunshots can be heard. Cesare initially assumes it's hunters, which isn't unusual for the area, so they continue racing. It's not until a few subsequent gunshots followed by the scream of Isabella that prompts them to turn back immediately and head towards the ruins. As they approach, they're met with gunfire from a group of bandits. Enzo pushes forward, slowed by the initial shots, but still managing to get through, and he arrives in time to see Gennaro and Isabella struggling with their abductors. Now, this entire abduction was incredibly sloppy because a lot of what happens here wasn't meant to happen. Isabella was never part of the original plan, and having witnesses in the form of her bodyguards show up and identify who the abductors were in the act of putting their hands on her are factors that only made it 10 times worse. The intended target was simply Gennaro. Messina, known as the Bandit King here, was hired by Ludovici to take Fontanella's son and hold him for ransom, using that leverage to force his business partner into giving up his interest in the Colosofo mines. In other words, in the last year, from that original newspaper headline of tensions boiling over between the Colosofo mine shareholders, Even though Enzo has left the region and thus our attention has deviated elsewhere, that doesn't mean anything has changed, especially at the mine. Under the stalled leadership of Ludovici and Fontanella, Colle Zolfo has only continued down the same direction it was already heading down. And this is where it all led to consequences that ballooned and began to involve other parties, particularly Isabella. While she was never a part of any of this, the fact that she was here meant that she couldn't be left behind. So Messina and his bandits took her, compelling Enzo and Cesare to give chase, first in Gennaro's car, and then by horseback, where Enzo personally would display yet another level of unyielding courage by completely disregarding his personal safety, hopping onto Messina's cart, getting into a fight with his own guards, and then, right as Messina prepared to aim a shotgun at him, dove over the edge of the cart with Isabella, saving her but leaving Gennaro behind in Messina's custody. Despite the 50% success rate of saving both captives, the next major leap for Enzo would take place right here. He and Isabella would share their very first kiss together. Now, it's quite evident, even at this point in time, where Enzo and Cesare have developed a better relationship, and Enzo is earning a little bit more loyalty within the Torrisi crime family. He's still seen in a particular way, as Isabella immediately separates herself from Enzo as soon as she hears the car coming, as her way to make sure that she doesn't get caught by her cousin with him. It's yet another subtle giveaway that even Isabella knew all the way back when, that it was not a good move to be caught with Enzo, or to be doing anything with him. This will be the last time I jump around from Enzo's commitment to life and his desire to be with Isabella because, well, they are unmistakably intertwined. Jumping around the way that I have been will only confuse as we continue, so for now, let's just say this. The kiss they share will directly unleash the floodgates of the feelings the two of them have for each other. This carries over into Enzo and Isabella finally being alone together in the chapel, where they admit they want to be with each other. Ironically, it's another moment that almost isn't private at all. Tino is nearby, standing on a balcony, overlooking the chapel, even commenting to Enzo on how beautiful it looks from where they're standing. This all matters in the context of where the relationship is headed, but as the title of this chapter suggests, this isn't Enzo's priority, and certainly not immediately. Gennaro is. Enzo would tell Cesare he's going after Messina to fix what went wrong, ordering him to take Isabella home. In front of her, Cesare would agree. There's no point in arguing, especially not when it risks keeping Isabella in harm's way. But he does take a moment to share what he actually thinks. That Enzo is going to get himself killed over Gennaro, over an asshole who isn't worth it. It's worth noting here this plays against the Don's own words earlier, at the start of this chapter. Enzo would risk his life to recover both Isabella and Gennaro. This doesn't just reinforce Enzo's value within the Don's eyes, it would sharpen the contrast with Cesare. Enzo acts because he believes it's what needs to be done. Cesare sees it as a pointless risk for someone who doesn't deserve it, and as far as he's concerned, his cousin is secure. And while none of this is stated outright, the weight of the day still matters. The Baron's son and the Don's daughter were out together under Torrisi's protection, in territory believed to be safe because of the fear and respect the Don commands. Even Messina's crew considered abandoning Gennaro entirely once Isabella became involved. Taking her escalated everything beyond what they planned for.
This wasn't meant to be easy. You pick up the boy and hold him till your man gets what he wants. The plan stays the same. We hold the little Coglione until the Fontanella falls. But there's a problem. The girl that was with him is the Torrisi's daughter. First light, he's gonna send a man. The whole area will be crawling with them. By then we need to be gone with the kid.
We could leave him here.
Until we see someone, the kid stays with us.
Had it not been for Messina being stubborn as he was and determined to get paid, that's probably what would have happened. They would have left Gennaro and abandoned the area so that way they don't have hell be brought down upon them by Torrisi's wrath. Speaking of Messina, one side note here, for someone talked about as often as he is, both in the world and through newspaper mentions, his removal was surprisingly quick. I understand he isn't meant to be a long-term figure, but given his background at Cozzolfo and his intentions toward both the Spadaros and Ludovici, which, yes, if you didn't know, Messina, the bandit king, was originally a mine boy just like Enzo was. He managed to escape during the Torrisi-Spadaro War and essentially wage war against everyone in the mountains. It's an angle that isn't really entirely developed or utilized, which is quite unfortunate because that could have painted a very different power dynamic within the valley. They could have even had it where Messina harbored a willingness or even outright intentions to double-cross Spadaro or Ludovici, due to his background at Cozzolfo. I think it's yet a giant missed opportunity, but regardless, acting out in broad daylight on the Don's territory undercuts whatever authority Messina believed he had. And it undercuts the Don's own authority, the illusion that anyone here is safe, the illusion that the Baron can just trust him. Bringing Gennaro back alive spares the Don from a complete disaster in front of the Baron, but it doesn't undo what happened. It also makes you wonder if this played a role in Fontanella's later decision to side with Spadaro, seeing him as someone more capable of applying pressure and protecting assets when necessary. And this might hold a little bit of credence when you take into consideration that before Isabella and Gennaro's attempted kidnapping, Torrisi was already aware of the growing problems between Fontanella and Ludovici, yet he refused to intervene even after Fontanella raised concerns. It simply was not the Don's problem until Isabella got involved. But once Enzo dealt with Messina and his men, the immediate targets, then only one person remained: Ludovici. And thus the following mission for Enzo is incredibly important, because as I have already framed this mission for Enzo, the Don's words echo all of it precisely.
I want to speak with you about my daughter. What you did for her, for our family, took courage. Luca tells me this is not the first time you've shown instinct in the face of danger. Bravery is not common in this world, and so loyalty, honor, obedience, they set a man apart from the rest. What happened at the temple was an insult to Isabella and to our reputation. You took care of Messina, but this matter is not yet resolved. Will you help me bring it to a close?
Of course, Don Torrisi.
With Luca already speaking on Enzo's behalf, the Don allows him to be the one to carry this all out. That decision places a significant amount of pressure on Enzo, whether if he realizes it or not. Meanwhile, Tino doesn't hide his objections towards allowing Enzo to take this major leap forward. It's nothing grand, but it's just enough for him to state his objections, albeit a little indirectly. Enzo's instructed to meet with Tino and the men under his command who have been closely tracking Ludovici's movements. When Enzo arrives, he's briefed on what needs to be done, but Tino makes the entire situation clear for everyone that's around. Despite two armed guards being at his side, he reminds all three of them that Enzo has been given this job directly from the Don. And if Enzo fails or makes a mess out of any of this, as he says, any misguided faith from the Don will disappear. It's not necessarily a warning or a threat, it's more of an expectation or hope. If Enzo fails, he ruins everything for himself. If he succeeds, well, he fixes a problem for the Don. Tino would later admit that he didn't think Enzo had the nerve for any of it. Although, as we've highlighted a couple times before, it's not just thinking he doesn't have the nerve for it, it's that he genuinely doesn't like or trust Enzo. In this context, this entire arrangement of Enzo taking this major leap on the behalf of the Don appears to work as a compromise for all parties involved. Torrisi wants Ludovici dealt with. Luca sees an opportunity to make Enzo's place official after saving Isabella twice and proving he can survive in this life. And then there's Tino, overseeing the mission, making sure Enzo does it alone. There's no help, there's no backup, just a quiet hope that he gets himself killed, which of course doesn't happen. Enzo breaks into Ludovici's home, fights through the Spadaro security force, carries Ludovici's limp body to a vehicle after knocking him out with a priceless statue within his own home, and then to the top of a hill where he's instructed to execute him. After one clean gunshot to the head, the bodies are arranged nearby. with wads of cash stuffed in his mouth and a trail of coin for what appears to be remnants of the Spadaro security force, to find the man who thought it was appropriate to cross Torrisi and who they failed miserably in protecting. With this initial test behind him, a week later, the carasu is no more, as he's brought to the cellar of the Don's own home and officially inducted into the Torrisi crime family as one of them.
You're here because of your deeds, and the assertions of those who stand at your side.
This life is one of secrecy. If you make a friend, meet a woman, they must not know about our thing.
It is binding. It is not forgiving. To betray one is to betray all. Do you wish to commit yourself, your life, to this family?
Yes, I do.
Then, before the eyes of all here present, join me. To become a man of honor, repeat these words. I swear my loyalty to this family.
I swear my loyalty to this family.
My flesh must burn like this saint if I do not keep my oath.
My flesh must burn like this saint if I do not keep my oath. Welcome, Enzo.
Enzo's initiation is filled with so many prominent members of the entire Mafia series. Of course, there's Luca Trapani, Father Sam from Mafia 1, who throughout the entire game serves as Enzo's own personal mentor. But there's also Frank Vinci, who would one day be the most powerful Don in all of Empire Bay. Don Galante, the Galante crime family, and his grandson Leone, or more commonly known as Leo Galante. Arguably not just the most powerful consigliere, but the most influential figure in the whole entire Mafia series. No matter how one may feel about Enzo and his rise through the ranks, this is the moment where he becomes tied to legendary figures and alters the course of his life. Because from here, if you begin to pay closer attention to what his conversations with Isabella are like, his perception of being accepted changes from working hard to gaining her father's favor through faith and loyalty, which from everyone else appears to be exactly what's happening. Immediately following Enzo's initiation into the family, Leo and Cesare would take him into San Celeste, where the three of them stay the night with some local loose women, culminating in the following morning with Cesare unveiling a surprise for Enzo, his own apartment. Granted, it came with some hallmarks of it being taken from its previous owner, with the closet full of clothes, breakfast on the table indicating they were in the middle of it before they were forced to leave in some type of hurry, and then a potential bloodstain on the floor and suggesting some type of duress they were under when evicting the premises. No matter, this was still a gift for Enzo, and it came with an important message from Cesare. Despite the odds, Enzo has proved him wrong as well, but he stepped up, and he's done great. This is all just the first step for when Cesare is running things that one day it'll be just the two of them. And he wanted to make it known with Enzo through this gesture that from this moment forward, Enzo will be Cesare's right-hand man. It only feels like the natural progression, but as we'll see, that won't exactly come to fruition thanks to the start of the second Torrisi-Spadaro War.
Since Spadaro took over that mine, he's been busy. turning guardia, leaning on the unions, buying votes, nibbling away like a rat. This cannot be left unanswered.
Tensions are building. It's true. But war must be avoided at all costs. Which brings us to a plan. Something between our two families, huh? Something for our future.
This business venture to combat the Spadaro rise is one that has been a very long time in the making. To understand the unification of the Torrisi and Galante families, you have to look at how far back their alliance goes, especially in opposition to the Spadaros. Now, throughout the game, the Galantes are shown controlling shipments in the docks at Porto El Marlo, their own territory, while working very closely with Don Torrisi and Luca. As Luca explains, the family has no reason to get their hands dirty. Don Galante is measured, business first, and deliberate in all of his actions, not unlike Luca himself. That mindset is not exactly what dictated his entire life, or the entire history of how he ran the Galante family. It was in fact shaped by a deeply personal loss he suffered from. It was during the original Torrisi-Spadaro War of the 1890s that Galantes were aligned with Torrisi. Whether that loyalty came from respect for the Don, hatred toward the Spadaros for their brutality, or some mixture of the two, is a little hard to say. What is clear is that both sides lost dozens of men. It was a brutal conflict that Torrisi himself says the region had never witnessed before. And it was none other than Leombra Bastoni who escalated to a point where it only felt right by all sides to bring the bloodshed to a close. Under the cover of night, he set fire to Michele Galante's home. Michele, Leo's father, was killed, along with his wife and 2 sons. In a single night, Leo lost his father, his mother, and both of his brothers. He survived only because he was staying with his grandfather at the time. Michele's death permanently changed how Don Galante operated. He was never a supporter of war from that moment forward, and after that night, he committed fully to restraining and rationalizing, placing him as the position of a mediator between the more aggressive Bernardo Torrisi and Ruggiero Spadaro. Michele's death also forced both sides towards negotiation. Even men from the Torrisi and Spadaro camps recognized Michele was someone who deserved respect, and he was honored by way of concluding hostilities, or at least open conflict. The agreement both sides would come to would be this. Torrisi territory would be something Spadaro would no longer be allowed to encroach on. It's expressly forbidden. Colizolfo, on the other hand, would remain Spadaro's. Torrisi would stay out of it and how it's ran, with one small exception, the factory in Colizolfo. This was an outlier asset operated by Vincenzo Lorenzetti, a Torrisi associate that has already ran the factory for quite some time despite its location. And so, with borders restored to their previous lines, the treaty was sealed with one final blood payment. Don Torrisi would take Michele's knife and use it to cut out Bastoni's eye's punishment. And that is how the Torrisi-Spadaro treaty has held ever since. Both sides still resented each other, that much was obvious. But with Enzo's initiation came a recognition from both camps that the other wasn't going away. If anything, the problem was only growing. By 1906, Spadaro was actively buying votes, placing officials on his payroll, and leaning on labor unions to expand his influence, steadily undercutting Torrisi's. In response, the Galante and Torrisi families moved together, putting a plan in place to shift the balance back into their favor. The Galantes control the Porto El Marlo. They see the ships that arrive and leave each week bound for the United States, and that gives them something the Spadaros don't have: direct access to America, specifically Empire Bay. They already have the connections needed to move American-made whiskey into the valley. The network exists, that isn't the issue. Cash is. Setting up a counterfeit operation within the United States would draw too much attention. There are too many eyes and too many authorities, so instead, they decide to act here. The two families come together to print the money themselves, hide it inside Torrisi wine crates, and ship it across the Atlantic, utilizing the network connections that the Galante family has already established. In return, they get what they actually need: cash to fund operations, American vehicles, and American-made firearms. The plan works because it builds off what both families already control. Even the printing press is accounted for, listed as destroyed during an uprising in an East African colony. No one's looking for it. The problem is the counterfeiter. He was arrested in Porto El Marlo and is being held in police custody. His name is Giuseppe Palmenteri. A Sicilian who spent time abroad, experienced in producing documents and currency, convincing enough to pass the strictest scrutiny. His work has never been flagged before. When he was arrested, though, the forged printing plates were on him. Both he and those plates need to be saved, and time is working against them. The longer Parlamentari remains in custody, the greater the chance someone realizes what they've taken from him and who exactly they have in their custody. Leo is put in charge of bringing Cesare and Enzo up to speed on all of this. The primary goal is to break Parlamentari out before anything happens, with Enzo taking the lead on this, primarily because, as Leo is quick to share, Giuseppe's being held in San Celesti. It's a town where nobody knows who Enzo is. Cesare, on the other hand, has either conned half the population or had sex with the other half. And Leo can't take point because he's the one overseeing the entire operation is done successfully. He even puts together a distraction to the authorities, making it seem as if the Messina gang are enacting here in San Celesti, which, as we know, Messina has been killed. Under the cover of night, Enzo breaks into the police station. He finds Giuseppe, frees him, and recovers the plates. The job goes through cleanly with only one small exception, and a little bit of foreshadowing. Before I mention those, though, I wouldn't be doing this justice without pointing out who else passed through this jail not long before. Roughly a year earlier, another name appears on a record if you choose to explore the police station: Ennio Salieri. The same Salieri who would later establish himself as Don Salieri in Lost Heaven in the United States during the 1930s. According to his police records, he was arrested after being caught with untaxed American whiskey hidden inside sacks of grain on the side of the road outside of Palermo. His official statement claims he bought the whiskey in good faith from an unnamed man on that very same road. Given how it was all concealed, it's hard to believe the authorities took that explanation seriously. What makes this all even more interesting, though, is what is further mentioned in the report. Salieri is noted as being seen regularly in Porto del Marlo, in the company of Frank Vinci and members of the Galante family. 3 names the police already associate heavily with smuggling. That's all significant because it confirms Salieri's ties to Vinci and the Galantes long before his own rise in the United States. He was already involved, already moving whiskey through Sicily years before Lost Heaven ever entered the picture. Across from the cell where Giuseppe's being held is Corrado Bastoni, better known as Leombra. He was arrested for robbery and the brutal assaults of a shop owner. From his cell, he speaks to Enzo. He says he knows who he is despite the mask Enzo's wearing. He adds that it feels like Enzo already knows who he is as well. He never says Enzo's name directly, but he makes it clear that he'll be paying both Enzo and Giuseppe a visit soon. It's a promise he intends to keep. After that exchange, Enzo leads Cesare and Giuseppe out of the station with the plates in hand. They make it most of the way before things appear to fall apart. Enzo's forced into a knife fight with the police chief. The chief is new to this whole region. He's been mentioned repeatedly in newspapers, arriving in the region with a reputation founded on restoring public trust, cracking down on mob activity, and dealing with men like Messina. Unlike the rest of the force, he isn't taking any bribes, and in this moment, he nearly kills Enzo. He would have succeeded if Cesare, Leo, and Giuseppe hadn't returned just in time with pistols, saving Enzo's life.
You have them? Then let's get out of here.
Once Giuseppe's free and immediately put to work, counterfeiting cash, the payoff is immediate. We're briefly shown how the operation works. Counterfeit cash is hidden inside Torrisi wine crates, transported by Enzo and Cesare, and then handed off to Galante men, in this case directly to Leo. He shows what they're already getting in return, including some documentation that you can find pointing to how quickly things are expanding. You can find a shipping ledger lists New Bordeaux as a departure point. For another ship Leo appears to have his eyes on, their reach is quickly moving south, expanding across the entire United States seemingly. For Leo, this is where things truly tilt in his favor though. Now if you pay attention, he's already been drawn to gambling and manipulating odds. He cleaned everyone out when he betted on Enzo during the Palio, which no one expected him to win. Later in Mafia 2, in his old age, Leo ends up in Hartman Federal Penitentiary for fixing fights. This is where that side of him starts to make all those pieces come together. When the conditions are right, Leo knows how to exploit them and how far he can do such a thing. Through his American connections, he's acquired a race car. It arrives in poor shape, it's missing an engine, there's bullet holes riddled across the entire car, but with Pasquale, the Torrisi Galante mechanic, his hopes are that doesn't matter. As long as Pasquale can get it running and somewhat manage to outrace a train as an experiment to see if it's fast enough, then they're still in phenomenal shape. Because both families have started an initiative that no one saw coming. Between both of them, they established the only gas pump on this side of the island outside of Palermo. This alone guarantees an endless amount of profit filling up their coffers, because everyone has to come to them. But it also opens other possibilities. Any driver who wants to race needs fuel, and fuel can be altered. A tank filled incorrectly doesn't need to fail outright, just enough to underperform. As for other aspects of competition, they don't need to be so hands-on. French drivers specifically are known to be shipping their vehicles through Genoa. With enough pressure applied there, a worker strike can keep those shipments tied up for weeks. So far from the Torrisi and Galante associates here within the Valle Dorata that they'd never be expected to have a hand in that. And then there's the race itself, the Targa Siragusa. This is a prestigious race. It's not open to just anyone. Entry requires approval. The American car gives them a technical foothold, but they still need to be registered. Leo knows the man in charge of organizing the race. He's the same person that's responsible for selecting the track and funding the prize money. It just so happens that he's also going to be spending a night at the brothel in San Celeste. And so Enzo is sent into town to meet Leo with a camera in hand. Utilizing Leo's connections, the women at the brothel tell Enzo which room the man is in. They leave the window open, where inside the man is blindfolded and tied to the bed, in a perfect angle for Enzo, who's meant to snap the most compromising photographs imaginable. This man is known publicly for piety and family values, and so this is a blackmailing scheme. In order to register them for the race, they would agree to hand over these photographs in exchange to have a place within said race. They're also given track details. Everything's set in motion. It's an entire plan with an incredible lucrative payout that Leo has not only thought but taken care of in every specific way. Even coming to the conclusion that Enzo would be the one driving the vehicle within the race and Cesare would be the navigator. Leo saw this as valuable in two other positions. One, it keeps Cesare away from being the driver, which everyone thought was going to be a grave mistake. Two, Cesare has lived here in the Valle Dorata his entire life. He knows these roads like the back of his hand. And that gives him an inherent advantage because all the other drivers are only given a maximum of a week to learn this environment. With the details of the track handed to Cesare, as well as women placed in key points along the track to signal shortcuts, there is quite literally no way this race can fail. It really is a job that is handled quite professionally, and it shows exactly how intelligent and efficient Leo was even at this young age. It's downplayed a lot by both Enzo and Cesare, constantly cracking jokes and telling them that they don't have faith in this car that is riddled with gunfire, but when you remove all of that noise and just think of all the planning, it is really quite incredible that nothing is left to chance. With the exception of the quality of the repairs Pasquale was able to manage, the race almost fell apart from the start. As soon as the signal is given, the car backfires. Cesare is forced to jump out and hand crank it just to get it moving again. Not long after, the fuel line comes loose, bleeding gasoline along the routes. It should have been another moment where everything just ended right there, but Cesare's quick fixes, his familiarity with the course and its shortcuts, and the fact that other vehicles began to suffer their own failures kept them in it. By the end of the day, they still would come out on top thanks to these compounding factors. Now, if there was ever a moment where Enzo reached his peak within the Torrisi family while everything else was still holding together, it would be right here. He won the Palio, he dealt with Ludovici and Messina, he broke Giuseppe out, helped make them all rich, and now he's added a race victory on top of all of that. That night ends with a photograph. Cesare, Enzo, Pasquale, and Leo. For Enzo, the real prize comes later, with Isabella staying the night at his apartment in San Celeste. The following morning, the two of them are nearly caught together by Tino. It's hard to not see this as yet another warning. Families riding high. Their efforts against Spadotto are working. Enzo's being praised, his confidence growing alongside his belief that he's proving himself to Don Torrisi. But as Tino puts it, fortune is fickle. And this close call is a reminder that danger hasn't gone anywhere. And it's certainly not a warning for the family.
So, what is it?
My man at the guard has been told to prepare for a raid of the tannery today. We have a traitor. You have to get down there now. Warn the men, clear the place out.
Who could have talked?
You leave that to me. There's more than $20,000 in bills in there. Get everything you can. And don't let the Garda take anyone in. Ugabisti.
The close call Enzo and Isabella had with Tino comes down to urgency. Tino has learned from an insider within the authorities that they have a rat. The police are preparing to move on the tannery, and they're coming in full force. The tannery was the location of their counterfeiting operation, and it was chosen for a very specific reason. It smelled. The stench alone was enough to keep people away for miles, and from the outset that worked perfectly until now. Tino would share this $20,000 in bills down there. Giuseppe's in the middle of printing, and the plates are still on site. It's Enzo's job to get down there immediately, warn everyone, get them out before the police arrive, and take the cash. Unfortunately, Enzo and Cesare don't make it down in time. They arrive just as the police are swarming the area. Watching the chief issue orders to a full detachment moving in on the tannery, and it's here that the confusion on how the authorities identified this as a lucrative counterfeiting operation becomes clear. Leombra had talked. He cut a deal with the authorities. The police chief gets the largest bust the valley has ever seen. In return, Leombra gets his freedom along with whatever money is found on the site. It's never made clear whether if this was sanctioned by Spadaro or if it was another move Leombra took on his own volition. What is clear is what happens next. Leombra and Cesare end up getting into a fight over the car loaded with the cash. Despite Cesare's desperate pleas for Enzo to shoot him, he can't get a shot off, resulting in Enzo and Cesare having no other option but to give chase. They try to reach him before he crosses back into Spadaro-controlled territory. Luckily, the weather works in their favor. A thick fog had rolled in, blinding Leombra and forcing him to crash his car. Finally making his way over to Leombra, it gives Enzo and his fugitive a moment to speak. Just as he was able to track down Giuseppe in jail and recognize Enzo through a mask during the prison break, his instincts here continue to be extremely sound. He tells Enzo that he can't kill him, not without severe consequences. Leombra isn't just another random thief or criminal. He's high-ranking within the Spadaro clan. His death would reignite the war. His brother would take over at the head of this crusade and demand blood. And even if Enzo tried to justify it by exposing Leombra's deal with the authorities by calling it a betrayal of Omerta, it wouldn't matter. No one would take the word of a carasu over his. After multiple playthroughs, this situation that Enzo and Cesare are placed in, I've always found quite interesting because across the game, Spadaro shows a repeated willingness to do exactly what Torrisi accuses him of, act without honor. Whether Leombra's move was ever formally approved or taken on his own is never confirmed. Looking at what comes later though, either option remains somewhat believable. After Leombra's death, Spadaro continues operating in a questionable way. During the Saints' Parade while Lucas' son is being baptized, Spadaro moves openly through the crowd. At the same time, elsewhere in town, Il Merlo takes up a sniper's position. Then there's Fontanella's factory. What initially presents itself as a labor dispute turns out to be something else. The factory shuts down following extreme union demands, which immediately draws attention given who oversees it, Vincenzo Lorenzetti, a childhood friend of Don Torrisi, someone who had run the factory for years without any kind of incident. Enzo is sent to look into it, and he'll come to find out that the shutdown itself is real, but the reason behind it isn't. Inside of Lorenzetti's office is a handful of letters, giving Enzo a clear idea of what exactly is going on here. A foreman's letter explains Lorenzetti has never ordered the closure. In the many years that he's been in charge of the factory, he's never been a friend with the unions, and halting operations isn't just questionable, it's far from ideal. The foreman warns that right now doing such a move would agitate their bosses, which of course would have been Don Torrisi, who was on the verge of open conflict with the Spadaros. He was in a sour mood, and this move would not help. There's two more letters, one written by Spadaro to Lorenzetti, while the other is written by Lorenzetti to Torrisi, asking for forgiveness. You see, Lorenzetti owed Spadaro a large sum of money. Over time, he'd managed to repay 600 lire, but that was barely enough to touch the interest that he's accrued. And so, Spadaro decides to leverage that debt and force a shutdown under the cover of a labor union strike. Lorenzetti's letter to Torrisi would go on to highlight that he personally believed the goal of this shutdown was to strip the factory while it was closed, taking anything valuable and either use it for themselves or resell it later. As Enzo would discover, Lorenzetti's fears would turn out to be true. Enzo would find him beaten half to death, and in his final breaths, he shares that Il Merlo has chased everyone away, and have indeed stripped the place clean. From here, he quickly learns that Il Merlo hasn't left the premises. He does his best to pull Enzo into a gunfight, and when Enzo refuses to come out and face him, they torch the factory in an effort to smoke him out. All of this happens after Leombra's warning and his death. It doesn't retroactively explain the decision he made, but it does sit cleanly alongside it. There are similar methods, like-minded approaches, especially when taking into account the labor union strike at the quarry, as those workers originated from Colizolfo. It's hard to say that in the light of what happened at Fontanella's factory under the guise of a labor union strike, that perhaps the strike at the quarry under another labor union strike wasn't an isolated incident, and maybe it was Spadaro prodding for weaknesses way back then. Going back to focus on the situation Cesare and Enzo have to deal with, they figure it's best to still kill Leombra and make it look like an accident. They leave his body in the wrecked car, set it on fire, and take all the money that he stole back. It's punishment for breaking Omerta, and an attempt to separate themselves from his death, hoping it keeps the families from sliding into a war, which it doesn't. In fact, it does nothing more than give them a little bit of plausible deniability, effectively putting the ball in Spadaro's court and allowing them to escalate things. After the factory is destroyed, Tino and Torrisi no longer treat the tannery as a single incident. Between the raid, Leombra's actions, and what followed, they see it all as part of a broader push into the valley. I believe based off the region's history between the two families and the counterfeit operation, really it could have been anything, not just the counterfeit operation that would have swung fortune back into Torrisi's favor, goading Spadaro to continue to push the envelope. Leombra's death was a catalyst that allowed them to engage in war under an excuse that saved their honor, but war would have been inevitable. It just so happened to be the death of a man of honor, as Spadaro described Leombra, that'll give them the ability to escalate things the way that they do, targeting the factory, targeting Enzo specifically on the day of the Saints Parade, and engaging in open conflict. Even Don Galante describes Spadaro's modus operandi, to provoke. But I do want to leave this question up to you. Did Spadaro allow Leombra to work with the authorities to trigger the raid? Was Leombra really acting alone, or was his death just collateral as part of Spadaro's bigger plans? Or was this always meant to open the door for Spadaro to move further into the valley? Whether if it's one of these things or a mixture of the circumstances, we can't deny that Enzo gets sucked into this war. And he convinces himself that as he continues to stomp out the Spadaro threats, in time he'll receive that favor from Don Torrisi that will allow him to finally be with Isabella out in the open. It's a belief that Isabella herself has stopped buying into, instead identifying the real threat of Enzo being sucked into this life, and watching him go down deeper and deeper into a path she knew was never for him.
About us being married. You really believe we will be? One day.
I know we will.
Not where my father is. Not here.
Your father trusts me, respects me. Once I'm a man of standing, he'll give us his blessing.
No. You don't know him as I do. I'll never be free to choose. And he'd never forgive you.
I think I could change his mind. You'll see. In time.
The day of the Saints Parade is important for a number of reasons, all within the context of the Torrisi-Spadaro War. As Merlo tries to kill Enzo, unleashing a hurl of bullets from the church tower down onto Torrisi's closest associates, leading to open conflict in the streets between Spadaro and Torrisi's men. All of this culminates in Il Merlo being killed not by Enzo directly, but by Luca. El Merlo managed to get the better hand over Enzo within the fight, and it's right as he's about to choke him out that he's shot in the head by Luca, resulting in a pretty emotional scene between the two of them.
You saved me. Again. Enzo.
It really does feel as if Enzo is like a son to Luca here. The way he grabs the back of his head like you would for someone you look after to make sure they are okay. Followed by Enzo's breakdown of acknowledging Luca saved his life again is all incredibly touching. But we cannot astray from the main point of this video's chapter, Isabella. On the drive over to San Celeste before the eruption of gunfire, Enzo and Isabella share quite a bit of time with each other. And with that comes interesting conversations. From her father trusting Enzo enough to be her driver, Isabella mocking Enzo for that being the height of his accomplishments, and how she wants a man with real ambition and settling for just being her chauffeur is a little disappointing. It's playful banter from her, while it's a real acknowledgement of perceived progress by him. He's trusted to be alone with the Don's daughter. However, the key point here is how Isabella mentions something crystal clear to Enzo that he will come to realize all too late.
What's on your mind?
What you said before about us being married. You really believe we will be one day?
I know we will.
Not where my father is. Not here.
Your father trusts me, respects me. Once I'm a man of standing, he'll give us his blessing.
No. You don't know him as I do. I'll never be free to choose. And he'd never forgive you.
I think I could change his mind. You'll see.
It's an acknowledgement that she cannot, will not, and ultimately does not want to live within her father's world. And predating even Enzo's initiation and multiple times afterwards, Isabella makes it clear to him that he has the ability to choose. Even though he continues to feel compelled to do her father's bidding, or to see to it that whatever's asked of him is accomplished, he has something Isabella would never have, the ability to pick and decide for his own. One would think the death of Il Merlo would be set as either a big personal milestone for Enzo or even a major blow to Spadaro, as Il Merlo was the one personally running the mine and throughout the game came off as Spadaro's right-hand man. And of course, Il Merlo was Enzo's personal enemy throughout the entire game. However, it's said that weeks pass between the day of the Saints Parade and the next time Enzo and Isabella meet. And when they do, Enzo brings some good news. It's the day he will be accompanying Luca, Cesare, and the Don out to the Tonara. A peace settlement between the Torrisis and Spadaros have appeared to be at the very least entertained by both sides, as the public nature of the war between them has spilled out into the streets in such a fashion that they're hearing rumors of a prefect from Rome coming down and aggressively cracking down on any type of mob activity. So it's in the best interest of business and all involved to reach some kind of agreement now. Spadaro has been talked to by Fontanella, while Don Galante has gotten Torrisi to reach reason and come to a neutral ground to speak on ending hostilities. Before heading out to such a meeting, Enzo would meet with Isabella in private to share the developments. It's all good-spirited from Enzo, but Isabella doubles down on not being able to live within her father's world. Given what happens at the Tonara, just moments later, this meeting appears to have an ominous feeling attached to it, as the Tonara peace settlement, or lack thereof, is mired in betrayal and stripping away any kind of idea of either being safe or secure within this life. All alliances would crumble here.
Despite misgivings, I'm here on the promise to find a settlement.
Too much blood's been spilled.
Because you broke your word. And because you can't control your men.
Are you asking for my protection?
I've seen how things turn out for those that you look after.
Let's dispense with the recriminations, shall we?
War's bad for business. You want a settlement? We have a proposal.
We?
Please, hear him out.
What is this?
Fontanella's is selling up, Torrisi. His stake in the mine, prospecting, and water rights on the east side of the valley. Including his vineyard, which you've taken as your home.
Completely catching Don Torrisi off guard, and to his utter surprise, the Baron had appeared to side with Spadaro, putting up his shares at the mine in addition to what Spadaro says prospecting and water rights east side of the valley, offering what he says is market rate of Torrisi's vineyard as a sign of alleged respect. In other words, the war between the two gave Spadaro an opportunity to undermine Torrisi by offering Fontanella enough cash to buy out him and Torrisi from the entire valley. When Torrisi rejects this proposal, Spadaro's men open fire, hitting Luca in the abdomen as he's preparing to protect Don Torrisi after witnessing Don Galante getting shot in the head. As more of Spadato's men close in attempting to finish off Torrisi and all of his men, Enzo and the Don have to fight room to room to get an injured Luca out of the building and back to a vehicle where they can manage to remedy some type of medical aid, ideally making their way back to the vehicle they left with Cesare outside. The brutal nature of Luca's wounds, coupled with the relentlessness Spadato's men pursued, going all the way to Porto al Marlo outside of the Galanti's family bar, and Luca's sudden death, is undoubtedly the moment everything changes, although not initially the way we might think. If we play Luca's death scene in its entirety, it highlights much of the current character's trajectory.
They're gone. Luca! Here, hold this. Put pressure on it. There's morphine upstairs. The girls will show you.
Where is the doctor? He's coming. You'll be alright, okay? You're alright. Resisti, Luca. Tranquillo. God, forgive me. Enzo, look at me. Get up. If you can. Get up. Luca. I've got it. Luca, svegliati!
The anger in Don Torrisi's face, the belief that Cesare, with Luca's death, is in the perfect position to step up and, as he puts it, grow into the role next to his uncle and Tino as the top three, with Enzo being next to Cesare as his right-hand man. As this hopeful understanding of his position and rank within the family falls apart in the following scene with a sudden slap to the face by his uncle who refuses to let him in on the big mission he has for Enzo and Enzo alone. However, this is all on a smaller scale. If we take a step back and look at the wider picture, it's the security they all feel that really takes a major blow here. The days following Luca's death sees the whole family on high alert. Enzo's even seen laying wide-eyed in bed and paranoid of anyone who drives up to his property. They are all actively being hunted by Spadato, who cannot stop now as he has had already laid his cards out on the table. Needless to say, this entire development puts the Torrisis on a back foot, a far cry from where they were when they were feared, respected, and had the legal backing of Fontanella, reinforcing Torrisi's own reign within the region. The vulnerability that they're currently experiencing is only magnified by their personal loss of Luca, and for Enzo, that specifically gets muddled here. It's no longer doing anything for this family or for the Don in order to undoubtedly secure his favor. It instead becomes avenging Luca, which is both a personal matter for Enzo and a desire for the Don to repay Fontanella for his treachery and Spadato for his massive insult. Luca's request for forgiveness in the life he chose and plea with Enzo to save himself and get out while he could become overshadowed by Enzo's personal desire for revenge. A desire so compelling that it takes over Isabella's revelation of being pregnant with Enzo's child. Isabella would even make an attempt at reminding Enzo that Luca died for her father's honor, and Enzo's only doing the same thing by going to Palermo and assassinating Fontanella and Spadato. Being no different from his mentor, his life and his family would all be put at stake just as Luca's was the day he was killed, and no matter how much Enzo tries, nothing changes that Luca's dead, with 2 boys and a wife left behind. Had it not been for Enzo's love and loyalty to Luca, I'm not sure if he would have agreed to such a dangerous mission as heading out to Palermo alone. But on the flip side, the counsel and guidance Luca would have provided if he was alive makes it even more difficult to speculate. Luca was a pillar which would have circumvented or altered many things, such as Tino, the Don, and Cesare all attacking Enzo later and forcing an abortion upon Isabella. Luca was effectively Enzo's greatest supporter and ultimate protector from any wrath brought down by Tino and Torrisi. It's hard to imagine him not helping in a similar fashion to Leo, who helped secure American passports for Enzo and Isabella, and Valentina, Luca's wife, who took care of Isabella, sneaking her out of Torrisi's home and keeping her safe until the time was right for Enzo to show up and take her stateside. But then there's also who's to say if Luca had any voice in making sure that things don't travel all the way to Palermo. It can all become an easy spiral of what-ifs. So to avoid the speculation and not dilute the main sentiment here, Lucas begged for Enzo to leave, and hearing Lucas' boys are left without a father would be the moment Enzo finally snaps out of his willingness to die for this family and to live for his own. A mentality that coincides with some major achievements Enzo would have only ever dreamed of a year or so prior. They would go on to sneak into an opera house with the help of bribing a Father Clemente with a gift from Don Torrisi. It was a crate of wine and cash for his communion, who, in his mood of gratitude, would lead Enzo down a path of underground tunnels leading directly into the theater Don Spadaro and Baron Fontanella are to be enjoying a night out, a supposed gentleman's agreement meant to keep up appearances and solidify the deal the two have settled on. It's a wonderful night for Fontanella, so Enzo shows up.
You agreed, so a good man die. People mourn him. Who the fuck would agree for you?
You.
Get in there, now!
Enzo's final words to Fontanella is all we need to hear to really understand his mentality. A great man died for one's greed. Greed that has now taken the Baron's life. But who will mourn the Baron? Certainly not Spadaro, as his time will come this night as well. As Enzo is slicing Fontanella's throat open, Spadaro walks in, and in a panic, he runs out, leaving his former child slave to be dealt with by his own guards. But none can stop Enzo. He'd go on to procure his own firearms, and he'd fight through the halls of the opera and backstage all the way to the tunnels he emerged from. The irony of emerging from the depths of tunnels owned by Spadaro to gain his own basic human level of freedom, to now chasing that same man down into another set of tunnels to repay the kindness is almost poetic. This has been a long time coming, fueled by the desire for revenge, compounded by his own personal suffering at the hands of Spadaro's men for his entire life. The time to put an end to a lifetime of suffering is now. Even after desperately running from Enzo, Spadaro is defiant until the very end, telling Enzo his father sold him for only 100 lire. You got a great deal. Enzo sees it for what it is, though. A psychological attack meant to humiliate him. It's just as ineffective as it is desperate. Enzo shares the clarity of the situation. Spadaro doesn't remember his father. Hell, he doesn't even remember who Enzo was. Nobody knew who Enzo was until the day he cut El Merlo's face. And ever since then, at every crucial turn, Spadaro was forced to finally acknowledge the boy who never had a name beyond carasu. The carasu who became untouchable because he by chance happened to wander onto territory of his mortal enemy and has been off limits since. In the end, the perception Spadaro had of Enzo being nothing more than a mine rat meant nothing. Enzo would end the knife fight between them by slicing Spadaro's arm. And as the Don looks at the wound, as soon as he turns around to face Enzo thrusts his knife right into Spadaro's jugular notch, killing him instantly. His death, along with Fontanella's, brings the open conflict between the Spadaros and Torrisis to a close, but he has to take a trophy for confirmation, and what is better than Spadaro's own ring? A confirmation of the deed's success and a gift to the Don signifying only he remains as a sole power within the whole valley. It's the ultimate victory brought at the smallest price. Enzo was sent alone, a nobody within both organizations, sent to kill a Don by himself, and a former close friend of Torrisi. A personal vendetta was settled both for Enzo and Torrisi, and now with no one left in his way, the valiant Coluzolfo lay open to Torrisi. He promises to repay the great debt owed to Enzo, his respect, his gratitude, whatever it means to Enzo, he has it. Even now though, Isabella is still off limits. And we should break down why. And we will do so by looking at Torrisi's actions. In handing the Coluzolfo mine to Enzo to run it after the death of Spadaro, it will make Enzo a very rich man. Yes. Hell, it would for all of them due to him having the most knowledge on how the mine works. Under his management, the transition of ownership should see the operation of the mine being as smooth as possible, potentially with no hiccups in the production of sulfur. It'll become an asset that may align all of their pockets with mountains of cash, but it also ignores the fact that Enzo came from that very same place, a place where he lost close friends and endured suffering every single day for such a long period of his life. at one point even vowing to go as far away from this mine as possible, and yet in a few short years he becomes the one perpetuating that cycle of pain and abuse he suffered from. This action also coincides with the Don's other plans for Isabella. Despite Baron Fontanella betraying Torrisi and being killed for it, his son Gennaro was still alive, and hence assumed the new role of the Baron. Rather than strong-arm him into giving up the holdings he assumed in the aftermath of his father's death, Torrisi opts to pursue the old dream of marrying Isabella off to Gennaro, making the union of both families come to fruition and thus still arise as a great bonding of two powerful families. Since Raphael is killed and no one else stands in the Don's way, it really just means as long as Gennaro says yes, Isabella will be his, and Torrisi gets exactly what he wants. Hence, even if Enzo chose to stay, the nail in the coffin for he and Isabella has already been hammered into place. With Isabella being pregnant, time is against the both of them. They would have been discovered for seeing each other, or at the very least Isabella having premarital sex with someone, if she refused to ever give a name. At that point, she literally would have been seen as damaged goods and tainted the family's name and reputation. Something that's really not too different from what we end up getting upon the discovery of her pregnancy. Only instead of the father being unknown, the father is instead a former child slave. From the Don's perspective, he wasn't a person. From the outset, he was always owned property, who was inside of Torrisi's home. He was saved, fed, clothed, trusted, and repaid the Don with nothing more than making him look weak. When it comes to the Mafia games, historical context is something we always need to take into account, especially here within Mafia, the old country. And historically speaking, what Enzo has done is massive. By getting Isabella pregnant, he has affected her perceived value, destroyed the Don's reputation in a multitude of ways, and shattered any future plans that he had with Isabella and Gennaro, or Isabella and whoever he wished his daughter to marry. And thus, his reaction and Tino's are pieces that really sell the importance of their honor here. Sicily was deeply religious at that time, and throughout the whole game we hear all about Torrisi's importance of honor and his reputation. Thanks to Enzo's background, the child he would have had with Isabella would have never been a grandchild of the Dons. He would have never accepted it. It would have always been seen as a bastard child that desecrated the family's bloodline, and becomes an existential insult to Torrisi's authority. If a Don cannot control his household, or in this case keep an eye on his daughter, then how is he to be trusted with any authority in protecting territory? Not to mention, Isabella to Gennaro would be a dishonored bride should he choose to still take her. There's no reality where they can stay here, or hope to be together with the Don's permission. The biggest mistake on Enzo's part, with the exception of sleeping with Isabella though, is never taking Tino as a threat he always was. If it wasn't for the conclusion of the war with the Spadaros, Tino's attention would have continued to focus on them. As we see with the Colozolfo mine placed under Enzo, the rounding up of any remaining Spadaro associates was a major priority. Just as he brought a close to the war, Enzo was instrumental in rounding up any remaining former Spadaros. In doing so, he unknowingly freed up Tino to recenter his attention on himself. All the way back to the destruction of Fontanella's factory, Tino had a verbal slip-up with the Don, highlighting how, despite Enzo's rise within the family, he never took his eyes off of him, and the war just demanded all of his attention for the time being.
Foreman's dead, and already cremated.
What happened?
Caruso found Lorenzetti beaten half to death. Spadaro's dog stripped the place clean, then torched it.
Enzo?
He's alive, but he isn't our concern right now.
He isn't our concern right now. I always took that as Tino admitting that, to him, Enzo was no good and needed supervision. Supervision that was trivial when compared to the insult of the Spadaros, along with their bold attacks on Torrisi territory. Once they were taken care of, Tino could then refocus his attention on the carasu, who was bound to screw up, given just a little bit of time. Or perhaps he knew that there was dirt and he just had to go looking at the right place, or the right person, and who better to focus on than Father Ciccione. Ciccione, given the context of everything, makes sense to be a target. He's saving Spadaro's men from the wrath of Tino and the rest of the Torrisi enforcers, offering the man refuge and a place of safety within a church under the protection of God. Considering he's nothing more than a priest, one would think he is safe, but that's far from the case. In fact, Tino may have had his eyes on the father just as long as he had his eyes on Enzo and Isabella. Ciccione was the valley's sole outlet of confession, or at least that's the way it seemed, and Isabella had went to him for confession quite often. If we go all the way back to the first day Isabella and Enzo ride out to meet Cesare and Gennaro at the ruins, they ran into Father Ciccione along the way, who mentions not seeing Isabella come to confession for some time, showing that there is a pattern and level of trust between the two of them there. The father is also seen around Torrisi's vineyard during Enzo's arrival, the celebration of Isabella at the start of the game, and he's the one to give Luca's burial service. He's a neutral third party that's privy to everyone's dirty secrets. Tino would beat everything out of him, revealing to the consigliere of Isabella's pregnancy, Enzo's plans to go to the United States via train with Isabella, and the time of the train's departure. Anything she had ever shared with the father was Tino's, and listening to the specific words he shares towards the father before learning everything.
When you drink wine, Orpheus, pull out your begging bowl for this and that. When you listen to the confessions of our women for some whisper of a thrill, it means you serve an higher power, and it isn't our Lord Almighty.
Tino, there is no reason, please.
We need to clear a few things up, you and me. Don't worry about this. The father knows how to turn a blind eye when he wants to.
Please!
Leave him to it. Come on.
This hints at Tino potentially long had his suspicions and just needed the concrete confirmation, greenlighting the Don to take the next step, arranging for Isabella to quietly receive an abortion, while Enzo is separated and killed. The bittersweet ending of Isabella making it to the United States, pregnant with Enzo's child and carrying a letter of his final words that was handed to her alongside a similar wooden horse he was given when he was a boy, signify that in death Enzo still managed to succeed. He was willing to leave everything behind, to be with the woman he loved, to chase a dream neither he or Isabella ever had. Freedom. Freedom to live how they chose. He went from nothing to being accepted, falsely buying into the idea of being a part of a family that wasn't for him, making his own despite it being a slap in the face to those that brought him into a new life. As he put it, no matter what, Isabella helped him overcome what he was. His past, whether that be as the carasu or following the orders of her father, no longer defined him. And for us, that means he goes from carasu to a father, as well as a protagonist who managed to kill 2 Dons and fully wipe the established powers within this entire region, from Messina and Fontanella to Spadaro and Torrisi. However, there is one more thing I want to address before wrapping this video up.
It's the day we chose a future for our family. My father left me for dead. Our child will live how they choose. Just knowing that makes everything we've been through worthwhile. I can't undo my past, but you helped me to rise above it. And for that you have my love, my loyalty, forever. Enzo.
We have to finish this off by talking about Enzo's final moments, and that means breaking down his confrontation with Torrisi and Cesare. After being discovered and separated at the train station, Enzo's brought back to the mine at Colozolfo, where the Don is waiting for him inside the office that already bores Enzo's name on the door. The handoff to him was already set to begin. However, this crowning achievement would turn out to be where Enzo was meant to die or potentially fight the Don. He's given an opportunity to at the very least defend himself. As soon as he walks in through the door, the first order given is for Cesare to cut off Enzo's restraints. After a few blows, the Don questions his manhood and demands he put up his hands to fight and defend himself. And yet Enzo does nothing but take it all. Here is where the Don's belief of Enzo really being nothing is confirmed. Enzo refuses to fight, and this entire scene has a good amount of depth to it that you may not have noticed. Because had the Don killed him or continued to beat him without cutting off his restraints, Enzo's nothing more than just a powerless victim. A death that ironically would, yet again, undermine Torrisi's domination. If the restraints were removed and Enzo fights, well, if Enzo's bested, he dies as a rival. Yet if he chooses to do nothing, take the hits and just plead, which is what he does, it's a subtle confirmation that Enzo's in fact beneath him. The mention of an abortion would compel Cesare to speak up, which solves two more problems. On the one hand, it gives the Don a chance to have Cesare do the dirty work, to kill Enzo, who's not worthy enough to die by the Don's own hands, and give Cesare an opportunity to prove that he in fact is someone, a dream that he has chased throughout the entire game. It also shows that at the very least, Cesare did care for Isabella, and up until the moment he snatched Enzo at the train station, I don't believe he was aware of any of this happening. Despite Cesare wanting to step up in the aftermath of Luca's death, become more mature, and grow into the void that is there in Luca's absence, Cesare's proven to be rash, a little careless, and, as Luca said, emotional. Actually, even Torrisi said that before. Giving into his emotions was the very reason why he wasn't at to sit down at the Tonara. Torrisi wasn't willing to let him jeopardize a peace settlement, so he stood outside with the car. Keeping that in mind, if you look at the interactions between Enzo and Cesare, from Enzo leaving to go kill Fontanella and Spadaro, to right before he's caught at the train station getting ready to leave with Isabella, there's nothing from Cesare that indicates he knows any of this is going on. Mind you, he's a little standoffish and a little bitter that Enzo has surpassed him and that Enzo is being given everything that he probably feels he deserves. But besides that resentment, there doesn't seem to be any type of hate or hints of him knowing of Enzo having any wrongdoing, which I doubt he would have been able to contain himself knowing Enzo betrayed Omerta and threw everything away for his cousin. Even with Cesare's perceived lack of dependability, he was loyal and believed in his oath. That belief trumped his friendship. He chose his path. Enzo, on the other hand, did have a chance to kill Cesare. Thanks to the volcano's eruption, Enzo was able to tackle Cesare out of the office. They tumbled down a hill and engaged in a knife fight where Enzo would win. And instead of slicing his throat, clearing up any loose ends, he spared him out of their friendship and his new mentality of choosing to just live for yourself. That's what he had done for himself. That was Isabella's choice, and now he hoped Cesare would do the same. However, a desire to be someone within the organization Torrisi created was what Cesare was after. He doesn't enter the picture again until after Enzo already killed the Don, who, in Enzo's mind, was the only person standing in his way. I don't see a point in providing a step-by-step explanation of the fight, as great as it is. The reason and outcome have already been covered, so Cesare is really the focus here. The betrayal of Cesare, or the foolish decision to embrace Cesare in a hug resulting in Enzo's death, has been a place of mixed responses. Some say it was dumb for Enzo to believe that Cesare would just let him walk away. Maybe that's true. It could have been a continued sense of naivety, given Enzo was only 22 at the time. Incredibly young, and with a close friend like Cesare hopeful. Hoping he and his friend making it out of this dangerous life and continuing not in service to a master, but in commitment to a faith of their own. Enzo's death is sad, but I can't help but feel what became of Cesare is a bit sadder. Granted, it's easy to hate him for killing Enzo. He did what he believed was right. He also thought there was at least his cousin, Tino, and guards in a home to return to. Instead, he killed a close friend, saw his uncle die, stripped his cousin of a husband and a father, and found everything he believed in literally burning. There's no future, no legacy, no one for him to turn to. Everything was lost. The look of him appearing to be a shell of his former self says it all. He has nothing, and he's to blame for the final blow delivered to his cousin, even if he tried to shift blame, which at one point he does, telling Enzo that anything that happens to his cousin is all because of him. He ruined her, and everything that happens or must happen from this point forward to Isabella is Enzo's doing. And make it sound as if anything that happens to her is Enzo's fault. That's not true. It's a painful reality he's forced to live with, and at the very least, he can live in this misery alone and let Isabella go.